Hi there, everyone. My name is Dr. Tucker, and this is SED 595, Adaptive Technology Evaluations, Week 1. So the first thing I wanted to do is give you a roadmap of what we're going to be talking about. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to review the syllabus and look over the major assignments for the course. We're also going to review a sample AT evaluation. It's going to be a comprehensive AT eval, but I want you to start thinking about the students that you'll be choosing for your assessments for the course. Then we're also going to look at, and I want you to start thinking about your concerns, fears, and any questions that you might have in conducting this evaluation. And finally, I'm going to review the video introduction requirements that need to be posted this week, and then also some other options if you have any technical difficulties. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle over to Blackboard, and we're going to look at the syllabus and the assignments. So once you go onto Blackboard, your home page is actually all of your assignments that are due. So if you move over to course information, the top link is your syllabus. So I'm going to open that up. Okay, so here we've got some of the pretty typical information. Since I am an adjunct, my office hours are by appointment, but I am here on Thursdays, so typically I'm available before class on Thursdays, but I have some flexibility. So if you ever do want to meet individually, then please let me know and contact me. You can see my email. Please note that my email is different from my last name, and this is an L1. So the course description, it's a case study approach to choosing and using the most appropriate technology assessment options for students of all ages with a variety of disabilities. All aspects of the referral process, looking at evaluation, consultation, follow-up, and implementation will be focused on. The contribution, you've got your outcomes and your assessment. For this particular class, we're going to be using a combination. It will almost be like a hybrid. We will have some in-class sessions, we will have some webinars, we will have some online session, and we will have a variety of guest speakers as well. This is the accommodation statement, so if anyone has any accommodations necessary, please feel free to email me, or we can set up a time to meet before or after class just to make sure that your needs are met. Academic honesty is extremely important, especially when we're looking at our discussion boards, and so making sure that your work is your own. School of Ed's conceptual framework, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with. Your log of your hours. So as I included in the email to everyone, the one book that you do need to purchase is the DeCoste Writing Protocol. It's $25 and it's an online download. So you can really do it at any time, and that's a link to do so. Other than that, every other textbook or reading that you have is available free online, or I have linked on Blackboard already. So here are the course requirements and assessment criteria. So everything is a total points based. So first thing is positive participation in all class activities. Since we're looking at evaluations and assessments, what we'll be doing is looking at some different protocols or ways to assess students, and then we're going to be practicing on each other. So having a positive outlook and being willing to contribute and collaborate with each other and kind of role play is really important. Participation in online discussion boards. Like I said, since we will have some classes that are online, we'll have a variety of discussion boards. So it is important that you contribute in those and follow the guidelines, and it will contribute to your grade. Your midterm project will be a 15 to 20 minute presentation reviewing a webinar or podcast that totals at least an hour on a topic of your choice. So especially since we're going to have some webinars in class, we're going to go over places where you can find free webinars. You can pay for them as well, but there's a lot of resources for you to find free webinars or podcasts. But I encourage you to choose an area where your evaluation, essentially, it will help you complete your evaluation. And then everything else really has to do with your case study and your evaluation. So you're going to first give student info and then your release, which is 1 point. Your case study rough plan, kind of giving me an overview of an outline of how you're going to attack your assessment, is 2 points. You will come to class with raw data in the middle of your session, so that will be 2 points. And then your overall AT assessment and report is 30 points. In addition to your assessment and report, we will go over some implementation paperwork that you'll complete for your student, which will be 7 points, and then you also have a reflection paper. So those are the major assignments for the course. As each one gets closer, we'll obviously talk a little bit more in depth about that. So the next is the tentative course schedule. So what I want to just highlight for you is that the class format, you can see it is, I will put if it's online or if we are meeting in Davis, so you can see that that's the first one here. I'll give the topic, our in-class activities, and then your homework for the next class. So for 126, everyone is going to be joining the quiet listserv, which I'm assuming most of you have already. We'll be talking a little bit more about that, but you need to make sure you join that and peruse the website. Make note of the archive section and resources on how to post to the list. And your reading will also be the AT guidelines, which are also linked in Blackboard, which I'll show you where in a moment. And you'll have to read the general overview, the laws and the policies. And anything in red on this portion is something that's going to be due or an assignment that you need to hand in. So by week 3, I wanted to put this on there because, again, I want you to start thinking about it. Think about a student for your assessment project. You will be conducting an AT evaluation on a student of your choosing. So you will need to obtain the necessary release form from the parents, permission from administrators to work with your student by February 2nd. If you have any difficulty coming up with a student, please let me know and we can try and work something out. However, you need to start thinking about this process because the sooner you have that release, the sooner you can get started. So what I have done is under the week 1 online class, I have a discussion board here of concerns, fears, and questions. So even as I'm going through anything, or if you have a question about the syllabus or anything that I've gone through that either you want to make sure we review next week, or I'll actually answer as soon as possible, you can create a thread here and I will respond to you there. And I'm going to get to the video introductions in a moment. So back into course information. This right here is a link to a live binder from the professor who previously taught this course, where we'll be resourcing some information there, so that's that link. Here's the sample AT evaluation that we're going to be going through in a minute. And these are the links to your other readings that you need to conduct the required readings from. Here there's a link to the Connecticut AT guidelines. Here's a link to the Know It and Show It, teaching strategies, and the ASNAT, which is the WADI by chapter, is sometimes a suggested read and sometimes a required read. So really all of that information is under course information. So now I'm going to open up your sample AT evaluation. Just give it one moment. As that's loading, you can see on the side here, depending on the topics, you have a different section for each of the information. So that's where you'll find any of the information, the discussion boards, or any of the required course information that you'll need. This is also a direct link here under discussions for all of the discussion boards that will be throughout the course. They're also embedded within each week as well. Okay. So what I have here is this is a report that I wrote. And again, this is a sample. This is just one example, but we are going to review a couple of different options. But I wanted to kind of give you a pretty comprehensive report as a sample to begin with. There's no requirements for formatting in your report that you do. This is an option for you. I have outlined in the rubric, which we'll go back to after we review this, exactly all the criteria that needs to be in there. But it's important as an AT evaluator and an AT specialist for you to create your own format and your own system and way of setting things up. So you can see that obviously I've not included the student's name or identifying information, but I start off by referral questions because that's one of the most important things, is kind of looking at what is the team looking for and what are the parents looking for. So you can see here, and we'll talk much more in depth about referral questions and referral paperwork. However, these are pretty open-ended. What AT tools are available? How can AT help him compensate? How can it help him better access the curriculum? And then from home, it's just whether AT would benefit the student. So what I've included here is just the background information, what was conducted in the file review, the current IEP information. And this is all extremely important because AT is really founded in the IEP. The whole purpose of assistive technology is to help the student make progress on goals and objectives. Again, we're going to go more in depth on this, but that's why this portion is so comprehensive and so important, because the IEP drives the assistive technology. In our particular ACES forms, we have school and parent referral forms. So that's all transcribed here. And then look at all these goals and objectives that were linked to this evaluation, which is one of the reasons why it's 24 pages long. So we're looking at word recognition and decoding, a lot of this remedial reading, which you'll remember from Bo Zamfir's class. We have the mechanics of writing. So looking at spelling, again, still that remediation portion. And then there's math. So now the evaluation actually starts. So you can see here that I have the teacher interview, the parent interview, interviewing the student, and then the observation. So we'll be practicing in class and kind of looking at what kind of questions will you be asking your parent, what kind of questions will you be asking the teacher, and then practicing writing up a student observation, because that's something that, again, it takes practice and it takes skill, because you don't want to spend your whole time transcribing absolutely everything and miss what's really happening. So it really is definitely a developed skill, which we're going to practice. So, and then finally I looked into writing. So in this particular evaluation, I used a protocol called the Wold Sentence Copy Test. We're going to look at the Wold in this course, but I'm also going to really emphasize a newer model called the Written Productivity Profile. Once we get into that, I'll show you how that's written up and we'll analyze some of that. But for this one, I did use the Wold for this particular student because he had such difficulties. So you can see there that he was asked to copy a particular sentence, and we're looking at 3 words per minute, 1 word per minute, 1 word per minute. And then I did introduce speech to text because the student had such difficulty with writing in his written output. So when asked to do written expression, so when typically what I'll do is I'll give the student a visual and ask them to write about it. He was unable to write the sentences. I asked him to write and he wrote an unintelligible word. In this particular one, you can see here, I refer to the appendix. If we scroll down, don't want to make anyone sick. In the appendix, you can see his handwriting. So this is his copy, and this is what he ended up writing when I asked him to do the written expression. So what that's telling me right there is that his method of output at this point in time, this boy was in 3rd grade at the time of this evaluation. So it really showed me that he needed some very intense writing supports. And we're going to talk about how do you know that and what are the next steps that you follow. I apologize. I'm going to toggle right back up to writing. So what I transitioned into is some low-tech word banks. And so you can see I have short little write-ups for each tech tool or support. I went to the Clicker Sentences app, and these are the various supports or scaffolds that the student can actually have within that particular app. And then what I did is I provided screenshots. And then I gave an overall writing analysis. So again, we're going to practice on doing these things, but what I want you to think about is I recommend that you choose a student that has difficulties or would benefit from assistive technology in the areas of reading or writing, because those are the two areas that we're really going to focus on in this course. We are going to talk about access, so if you do have a student with a physical disability, we will be going over that. However, with more practice, I would recommend looking at a student with reading or writing. However, it's not a requirement. I've had students before do individuals in college, so looking at some career assistive technology and doing career assessments. So it really can be anything that you're interested in. So what I did for this student is, because he really demonstrated no typing skills. The way he was attacking the keyboard was not organized. He had no clear plan. So I looked at some keyboarding support specifically for him. And then what I started doing is looking at his IEP goals and objectives and linking them to tools that would help him. So this specifically targeted his editing and revising one. And that's, again, what I'm really going to emphasize throughout this course is having the IEP drive the AT evaluation. So we're really focusing on the student, what are the student's needs, and what is the documented needs in the IEP. So next what I did is I dove into reading. We will be going over and practicing administering the protocols for accommodations in reading, which is the PAR. Essentially what the PAR is it figures out what accommodations the student would benefit from. Specifically, if the student is given grade level text, if they read it, or if an adult reads it, or if a text reader reads it, how does that alter their comprehension? For this particular student, because he had such a discrepancy in what he could decode versus what he could listen to, I didn't want to discourage him immediately. So I actually gave him kindergarten level text. So I went to his independent reading level, and there, even still, he only had 62% accuracy. So he had a lot of difficulty accessing that. However, even with 62% accuracy, he was able to answer all of the questions correctly. So what I want you to think about is, what does that tell you about him? So then next, even more interesting, I did grade level text, so I did third grade. I read it, and then he answered only 56% accuracy. And then he listened to it through a text reader, and he got 88%. So essentially, his comprehension scores were the highest with a text reader. And we're going to talk about the little nuances of a text reader and how to really analyze that. So what I did afterwards is I gave resources to the team on how they could get text electronically and how he could listen to text. So what we're really doing in this course is you're learning the assessment protocols, but then it's tying together all of the different tools and supports that you've learned in reading and writing and assistive technology and AT for access, and really your intro course. So we're kind of pulling everything together for this course to really prepare you for the summer practicum when you're actually in the field working with students all day. So that was the compensation portion of reading. And next I moved to remediation to help gather this, which is such a large category. I organized this by goals. So what I did is I took his goals and his objectives, and you can see I listed them here. And then I provided supports to help him make progress in those goals and objectives. Personally, my background as a special ed teacher, I find that less is more. Rather than providing one tool for each and every objective, which can be really overwhelming because there are so many that were linked, I tried to find tools that would clump them together. So here you can see there's a number of goals that could be covered by this particular app. And then I listed some of those apps there. So what you'll be doing is you'll be getting hopefully, the IEP and the objectives that the student needs to work on, or at least the areas of concern. And that's really going to drive all of your research, all of your assessments. And we'll talk a little bit about setting this up. But what I really wanted to focus on here for you is that the IEP and the student's needs are really driving this report. So I'm listing the goal and the objective first and then providing the support. And the same thing with math. Math is a very difficult area for assistive technology because it's so specific on the skill that's being learned, whether it's fractions, it's adding, it's multiplication, or it's division. So again, I typically always organize my math section by IEP goal and objective. So here I've done the same thing. I have the objective, and then I have the support underneath it. Now, again, my report is very visual because I tend to be a visual person. Because I'm coming from being a special ed teacher, I thought about what reports I liked to read. I like to read things that give me examples that really kind of shows me how I could start using it in my class immediately. Again, this is not a requirement. If you find that visuals are too cluttered, that's completely okay. It's more about the content of your report. I'm not requiring you to write a report exactly like I do. So you can see, and then I moved on to the recommendations. So, and we'll again have another class that completely talks about writing and wording recommendations and what you think. This is another style, but what I really need to summarize is exactly what the student needs and what really should be added into the IEP. So what I've done is I give an overall recommendation and then I provide more details about that. It's summarizing essentially the whole report. Because I don't know about you guys, but anytime I get a report for any of my students, I immediately look to the back of the recommendations. And so if someone does that, I want to be able to capture as much as I can. It's almost like a small little abstract of my report. And then what I've done also is I've listed all of the technology in the back that I'm recommending for the student to have. And you can see there's the purchasing information. So again, this was a very comprehensive report. But I wanted you to see that so you could start thinking about your students. Because like I said, February 2nd, you're going to want to make sure that you have your student identified and you have the appropriate permissions. So I wanted to go over that with you today so you could think about what student would be good. You want to make sure you're not in a super contentious case, so you want to make sure you have administrative approval as well. So yes, if you have any concerns about that, please contact me, whether you want to shoot me an email, you can write it on the discussion board, or we can meet before or after class. Okay. The next thing that I want to go over is that part of your online positive participation, which is 15 points on your syllabus, is you're going to be monitoring the Quiet Listserv, which I talked about beforehand. And I have to say that the Quiet Listserv is really my major form of professional development besides Twitter. So monitoring the Quiet Listserv, for me, it's like eavesdropping on a whole bunch of experts in the field. I know for most of you, it's just an email clutter, and you probably have just either been getting the digest or you unsubscribed from your intro class. But what I need you to do is before next class, you need to either re-register or update your settings so that you're getting your quiet emails. What I'm going to do next week is I'm going to model the AT tips, for you. So what you're going to be expected to do. Essentially, you're going to be leading a 10-minute discussion on the AT tips for the week. So what was happening on quiet? Now, the reason that I'm not in class tonight or on Thursday is because I'm attending a conference, which is in Florida, which is ATIA. So a lot of the people on quiet right now are going to be at the conference. So this week probably won't be as active. There has been some activity already and some interesting stuff on there, but it might not be as active. But essentially what you do is you're going to lead a 10-minute discussion on what's happened the week in quiet, and you're going to create a one-page resource. Did you find anything cool? Maybe links to some new stuff. Particularly, actually, today, a vendor just posted that they're giving away a free version of an $80 communication app to SLPs who register. So that's some really good information that you might want to give some people. So your one-page resource, which again I'll model for you next week, is really just going to summarize what you've learned from that week of monitoring quiet. So I randomly assigned everyone, so you can see here, I've assigned your weeks. So you are going to, whatever week is yours, so week 3 will be Laura. You'll have that 10 minutes at the beginning of class where you'll just lead the discussion. So rather than just 10 minutes of presenting, I encourage you to present your tips, but then spark some questions, because sometimes there's more discussions rather than just giving a whole bunch of resources or sharing them. So prompting a discussion for the class is a really important aspect of this. Again, you'll have a model for next week, so hopefully that'll clear up some things. But if you have any questions, please feel free to post it on the discussion board. Sorry, I went out of order a little bit. So what I would like you to do now is, I'm assuming you're taking notes. So in your notes, I want you to complete this little fill in the blank. So AT evaluations provide blank to blank with the goal of blank. And what we're going to do is we're going to share them next week in class. So I do want you to write this down and have this available for class, because it's really important for me to kind of get your perspectives on AT evaluations, how you feel about them and your experiences with them. I'm going to give you a minute here. Feel free to pause the video so you can copy that down, but really think about it. You don't have to do only one word. You can do phrases, but think about, what do AT evaluations provide? To who? Or to what? With the goal of? So, we really are embarking on a new chapter, especially in your degree right now. So we've really focused on classroom work. Up until now, you had your intro, you've had reading and writing, and you've had your access class. And now we're going into working directly with students and looking at more of the assessment part. So what I would like you to do is, again, jot down and bring to class, what are your 3 fears about conducting an AT evaluation? And I want you to be honest. We will have an open discussion next week about it. What are your fears? I know for me, my fears, even now after practicing for 3 years, kind of range from, will my technology work? Will my technology break down? Which unfortunately happens quite a bit because it's technology. But there's also fears about even just, do I know it all? There's so much out there. I can't know it all. Am I doing the right thing? How do I make sure that I've been as comprehensive? Those are just some of my fears and anxieties that I still have today. And then what are your 3 strengths that you feel will empower you during your AT evaluation? We're also individual, and we'll also do some work on that, as kind of learning about yourself as an AT specialist and as an AT trainer, and how you can help empower students and teachers to continue using assistive technology. So what would you say are your 3 strengths? Again, I want you to bring this information week 2, so jot that down. So, due next week, you do need to join the Quiet Listserv. Again, you've probably already done that because that is a requirement for your intro course. But I want you to also make sure that you have the settings active. I have a couple of different emails, and I have one email almost specifically just for quiet. that I use to kind of keep track of it, because if it was in my main email, I do think it would get a little overwhelming. What I want you to do is peruse the Quiet website. Look at the archive section. So that's something that I use quite a bit. So I'm just going to go to the Quiet website for you. So this is the Quiet website. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Quiet is a committee essentially that has created the quality indicators for assistive technology. Since there really is no certification for assistive technology, RESNA does have now an exam where you could be a certified AT practitioner. But other than that, there's no really certification criteria. That's just a certificate. It's not a certification. So what they've done is this committee has really created indicators for best practices for being an assistive technology specialist. So this is the homepage. If I go into the indicators, we can see here that these are the quality indicators for assistive technology. And you will be reading some of these, and we'll go over them even more in depth in SED 636 for those of you who are in it or will be taking it in the future. So this is just a really important thing to make sure that you're up in practice and you are really being the best that you can be. And here's the information for the Quiet list. So you can join the list, you can leave the list, you can change your delivery options. But what I really like here is the archives. So what this allows you to do is you can search the archives. So I do this a lot, especially if I have a particular problem where I really want to learn about a new note-taking tool or the specific feature of a communication app. I can view or search the archives and see if there's been a discussion about it previously, rather than asking a question, because sometimes people will say like, oh, we just talked about this like last week, you should search the archives. But I have to say it's amazing how welcoming everyone is, and it really is there just a wealth of information. So like I said, it feels like I'm eavesdropping on all of these experts in the field, which is really cool. The other thing that they have is they have a resource bank. So part of the guidelines, which I do want you to also make sure that you read about, is that you're not allowed to attach a document, just because to be respectful of everyone's mailbox sizes. So what you can do is submit something to be added to the resource bank. So you can see there's a variety of documents here: Google Voice training lesson plans, Google Forms to track behavior, evaluation for speech recognition. I really like this one. So everyone is really welcoming and sharing all of these resources that they've already created, which is awesome. And this is a huge resource. So I highly recommend you look through these, because there's probably some good information for you. Here you can submit a document. Here's some useful links. There are also some announcements here. Looking at Quiet. And then there's more information about the Quiet leadership team. Gail Bowser, who is just the guru, one of the gurus in assistive technology, her and Joy Zabala, which we'll talk about when we look at the SET framework. And then all of these other names you will see come up a lot in the Quiet listserv, because obviously they are on the leadership team. So that's all about Quiet. So you need to make sure that under the Quiet list, you join the list or you change your delivery options to make sure that you're still getting them. You also need to read the Connecticut AT guidelines, which, like I showed you in Blackboard, is under course information. I gave you the link to the Connecticut guidelines because they did purposefully make them electronic so that they can be changed and updated. Oops. So again, start thinking about your student and your suggested read. Now, finally, before we close off, what you will also need to do is I want you to create a video introduction. So what I want you to do is, I'm going to post my video after this, is that I want you to give me some information about yourself. So introduce yourself to the class, and what your role is. So what are you currently practicing now? So are you a teacher? Are you an occupational therapist? Are you a full-time student? So kind of share with us what you're doing now. what your experiences have been with assistive technology and why you started in the program. And then I think that's it. So you're going to tell us your background, what you're doing now, how you got into assistive technology, and what your experiences have been with assistive technology. Really just want to see, have some of you used it before? Have you had AT evaluations? Have you experienced trainings? But just give me some background. And what would you like to do with your degree? Here we go. Are you interested in becoming an AT specialist? Do you want it to just kind of add to your toolkit, to kind of be a little bit more marketable? Like, why did you go into this field? So you're going to post it here. What I also want you to do is then to reply to everyone else's video post. So we can have, as if we were introducing ourselves in class, kind of having that nice little discussion. You may, if you download the Blackboard app, you can just record your video on your phone and then upload it right there. You can do an audio if you would like, but I would like the visual of the videos just so that we can kind of see each other and meet. Let me know if you're having any technical difficulties. If you have a Mac, you could use QuickTime to just record yourself. There's a built-in screen recorder there. But if you have any questions, please let me know. I think we have covered everything. So I appreciate everyone's flexibility in our first online class. And I look forward to meeting everyone in person next week in Davis. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to, under the week 1 online class, post them under concerns, fears, and questions. And please make sure to post your video introductions and respond to everyone by next week. And thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a great week, and I will see you on Thursday.